The blood staining her hands was not her own, and Natalie Lawson had never felt more alive than in those moments when she pulled someone back from death's door. She pressed the cloth harder against the cowboy's shoulder, her fingers working with practiced precision even as the stagecoach rattled over another rut in the dusty New Mexico road, threatening to send her medical bags sliding across the floor for the third time in as many miles. "You are going to live," she told the wounded man firmly, her voice cutting through his groans of pain. "But you need to stay still and let me work." The man had been shot during a robbery attempt just outside Santa Fe, and Natalie had been the only passenger with any medical knowledge. The driver had wanted to leave him bleeding by the roadside, but she had refused, insisting they bring him along. Now, 3 hours into their journey toward Hot Springs, she was beginning to wonder if her compassion would prove fatal to them all. The man had lost a lot of blood, and his skin had taken on a pallor that worried her. "Almost there, miss," the driver called down. "Hot Springs is just over the next rise." Natalie nodded, though the man could not see her through the coach roof. She had been traveling for nearly 2 weeks, making her way from Philadelphia to this remote corner of the New Mexico territory. The year was 1878, and the West was still wild enough that a woman traveling alone raised eyebrows and questions. But Natalie had grown accustomed to both during her 24 years of life, particularly during her 5 years of medical training under Dr. Morrison back east. The town of Hot Springs materialized out of the desert landscape like a mirage made solid. Adobe buildings lined a main street that looked like it had been carved straight through the earth itself, flanked on both sides by wooden storefronts and establishments that leaned at angles, suggesting either poor construction or the slow work of desert winds. In the distance, the Sangre de Cristo Mountains rose up purple and imposing against the afternoon sky. The stagecoach lurched to a stop outside a building with a weathered sign reading "Doctor's Office," though the paint was so faded that Natalie had to squint to make out the words. Before she could even open the door, a man emerged from the building, white-haired and moving with the careful deliberation of someone nursing either age or arthritis. "I heard the shot man was being brought in," he said, peering into the coach. His eyes widened when he saw Natalie. "You are not what I expected." "I am a physician," Natalie said simply, helping to ease the wounded man out of the coach, or as close as the medical colleges would allow a woman to become. "I studied under Dr. Morrison in Philadelphia." The old doctor, who introduced himself as Dr. Pemberton, looked her over with an expression that managed to combine skepticism and relief in equal measure. Together, they carried the wounded man inside, and Natalie spent the next hour assisting in surgery to remove the bullet and close the wound properly. "You have good hands," Dr. Pemberton admitted when they had finished, washing blood from his instruments in a basin of water. "Where did you say you trained?" "Pennsylvania Medical University," Natalie replied. "They allowed women to attend lectures, though they would not grant us formal degrees. I learned what I could and studied the rest on my own." Dr. Pemberton dried his hands on a towel and regarded her with new interest. "And what brings you to Hot Springs? This is not exactly a destination for most folks, particularly educated women from the East." "I received a letter from the town council," Natalie explained, retrieving her own bag from where the driver had deposited it just inside the door. "They said there was a need for medical assistance, particularly with an outbreak of dysentery affecting the outlying ranches." "That would be my letter," Dr. Pemberton said with a sigh. "I am getting too old for this work, particularly riding out to the ranches. My joints cannot take the saddle like they used to. When I heard about a woman physician looking for work out west, I thought perhaps it was worth extending an invitation." They talked for another hour about the town, its residents, and the various medical challenges she might face. Dr. Pemberton had been the only physician within 50 miles for nearly 20 years, and he was clearly grateful for the help, regardless of her gender. As the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold, he showed her to a small room behind the office that would serve as her living quarters. "The biggest challenge right now is the Circle Ranch," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Ethan O'Connor owns it, about 10 miles north of town. He has 15 men working for him, and at least half of them have come down with dysentery over the past 2 weeks. I rode out there once, but Mr. O'Connor is a stubborn man. He barely listened to a word I said, and certainly did not follow my instructions about boiling water and proper sanitation." "Then I will ride out there tomorrow," Natalie said firmly. "If there is an outbreak, it needs to be contained before it spreads further." Dr. Pemberton smiled. "You remind me of myself 30 years ago, full of determination and certainty that medicine can fix everything. The West has a way of teaching humility, Miss Lawson, but I admire your spirit nonetheless." That night, Natalie lay awake in her narrow bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the desert. Back in Philadelphia, she had grown accustomed to the noise of the city, the constant rumble of carriages and the voices of people passing beneath her window. Here, there was only the occasional howl of a coyote and the whisper of wind across sand. She thought about her decision to come west, about the scandal it had caused among her family and friends. A woman simply did not travel alone to the frontier, they had told her. It was not proper, not safe, not sensible. But Natalie had never been particularly interested in what was proper. She had wanted to heal people for as long as she could remember, ever since watching her younger brother die of scarlet fever when she was 12 years old. The local doctor had been drunk, incompetent, and indifferent to the suffering of a poor family. Natalie had sworn then that she would be different, that she would learn everything she could about medicine and use that knowledge to help those who needed it most. The frontier, Dr. Pemberton had written, was full of such people. She rose before dawn, dressing in her most practical clothing and packing her medical bag with supplies she thought she might need. Dr. Pemberton had arranged for her to rent a horse from the livery, a steady mare named Daisy who looked at Natalie with patient brown eyes that suggested she had carried inexperienced riders before. The ride to the Circle Ranch took nearly 2 hours, following a rough trail that wound through scrubland and across dry creek beds. The sun climbed higher as she rode, and Natalie was grateful for the wide-brimmed hat Dr. Pemberton had insisted she borrow. The landscape was beautiful in its own harsh way, all muted colors and endless sky, so different from the green forests and rolling hills of Pennsylvania. The ranch itself appeared gradually, announced first by the sight of cattle dotting the distant hills, then by fences that looked newly mended, and finally by a collection of buildings that included a large main house, several barns and outbuildings, and a bunkhouse that had seen better days. As Natalie rode closer, she could see men moving about their work, though fewer than she would have expected for a spread this size. She had barely dismounted when a man emerged from the main house, and Natalie felt her breath catch slightly at the sight of him. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair that fell nearly to his shoulders and eyes that were an unusual shade of green even at this distance. He moved with the casual confidence of someone completely at home in his own skin, and there was something in the set of his shoulders that spoke of strength, earned through hard work rather than inherited. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice deep and touched with the hint of an accent she could not quite place. Irish, perhaps, or Scottish. I am looking for Ethan O'Connor, Natalie said, securing Daisy's reins to a hitching post. I am Natalie Lawson. Dr. Pemberton sent me to check on your men. The man's expression shifted from curiosity to something harder. I am Ethan O'Connor, and I told Dr. Pemberton we did not need any more help. My men are fine. With respect, Mr. O'Connor, if half your workforce is suffering from dysentery, your men are decidedly not fine, Natalie said, meeting his gaze steadily. An outbreak like this can spread quickly, and if it is not properly managed, it can be fatal. Ethan crossed his arms over his chest, a gesture that might have been intimidating if Natalie had not spent 5 years arguing with professors who thought women had no business studying medicine. And what exactly do you know about managing an outbreak? You look barely old enough to manage a household, let alone medical care for a ranch. Natalie felt a familiar flash of irritation. I am 24 years old. I have 5 years of medical training, and I have treated more cases of dysentery than I care to count, Mr. O'Connor. Now, you can either let me examine your men and help them recover, or you can continue to be stubborn and risk losing more of your workforce. The choice is yours. For a long moment, they stared at each other, and Natalie could almost see him weighing his options. Up close, she could see that his eyes were not simply green but flecked with gold, and there was a weariness around them that suggested he had not been sleeping well. His hands, she noted, were calloused and scarred, the hands of a man who did not shy away from hard work. Fine, he said finally. But I am warning you now, my men are not going to be happy about being examined by a woman. Cowboys are a traditional lot. Then they can continue to suffer, Natalie said pleasantly. I am not here to force treatment on anyone. I am here to offer help to those who want it. She thought she saw the corner of his mouth twitch, as if he was fighting back a smile, but his expression remained stern. The bunkhouse is this way. Ethan led her across the dusty yard to the bunkhouse, a long, low building with a roof that looked like it leaked in places. Inside, the smell hit her immediately, the distinctive odor of illness and unwashed bodies in close quarters. A quick count showed 10 beds, 6 of them occupied by men in various states of distress. The air was stifling, with only 2 small windows providing ventilation. First thing, Natalie said, setting down her bag, we need to get some air flowing through here. Open those windows and prop the door open. It is cold at night, one of the men protested weakly from his bed. It is also full of bad air right now, Natalie replied. You need fresh air and sunlight. That is non-negotiable. She spent the next several hours examining each man, asking questions about their symptoms, and taking notes in the small journal she carried. The picture that emerged was exactly what she had suspected: contaminated water combined with poor sanitation. She also noted that their diet seemed to consist primarily of beans, salt pork, and coffee, with almost no fresh vegetables or fruit. When was the last time any of you ate something green? She asked. The men exchanged glances. We had some canned tomatoes about a month back, one of them offered. Natalie turned to find Ethan standing in the doorway, watching her work with an unreadable expression. Your men need clean water, proper sanitation, and better food. The dysentery is coming from somewhere, most likely your water source or the way waste is being handled. We get our water from the creek, Ethan said. Same as we always have. Is there any ranching activity upstream from where you draw your water? Natalie asked. Ethan frowned. The cattle graze all over the property. Then your cattle are contaminating your water source, Natalie explained. You need to either move where you draw water to a point upstream from any cattle activity, or you need to dig a well. In the meantime, all water needs to be boiled before drinking or cooking. She could see resistance forming in his expression again, that stubborn set to his jaw that suggested he did not like being told what to do, particularly by a woman he had just met. But before he could argue, one of the sick men spoke up. "Miss, if you can help us feel better, we will do whatever you say. This sickness is making it hard to work, and I cannot afford to lose my wages." Natalie smiled at him. "I am going to leave instructions for treatment, and I will check back in 2 days to see how everyone is progressing. In the meantime, I need to examine your kitchen and see how food is being prepared." The ranch kitchen was a disaster. The cook, a man named Pedro who looked to be in his 50s, was doing his best with limited resources, but the conditions were far from sanitary. Natalie spent an hour explaining proper food handling, the importance of washing hands, and how to tell when meat had gone bad. Pedro listened intently, asking questions and taking her advice seriously in a way that his employer had not. "Mr. O'Connor, he is a good man," Pedro told her quietly while Ethan was outside dealing with some ranch business. "But he has been alone too long. This ranch, it is all he has. He does not trust easily, especially not strangers." "What happened to make him so distrustful?" Natalie asked, cleaning her hands in a basin of water she had insisted be boiled first. Pedro shrugged. "That is his story to tell, not mine, but I will say this: he has known much loss. It makes a man hard, you understand. But underneath, he is still good, still capable of softness, even if he has forgotten how to show it." Natalie thought about those words as she prepared to leave that evening. She found Ethan in the barn, checking on a horse that appeared to have a slight limp. He looked up when she entered, and she noticed dirt streaked across his forehead, and his sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. "I am heading back to town," she said. "I have left instructions with Pedro for caring for the sick men, and I will return in 2 days to check on their progress. If anyone worsens before then, send someone to fetch me immediately." Ethan straightened, wiping his hands on his trousers. "How much do I owe you for today?" "Nothing yet," Natalie said. "I will bill you after your men recover. Right now, my concern is making sure the outbreak does not spread further." He studied her for a long moment, and Natalie found herself unable to look away from those strange green-gold eyes. There was something intense about his gaze, as if he could see right through her careful composure to the uncertainty beneath. "Why did you really come out here?" he asked suddenly. "A woman with medical training could find easier work back east. Why travel all the way to New Mexico to treat cowboys and ranchers?" Natalie considered her answer carefully. "Because back east, there are plenty of physicians. Out here, there are people who need help and no one to provide it. I did not study medicine to have an easy life, Mr. O'Connor. I studied it to make a difference." Something shifted in his expression, a softening around his eyes. "Call me Ethan. If you are going to be treating my men, we might as well dispense with formalities." "Then you should call me Natalie," she replied. He nodded slowly. "Natalie. That is a nice name. It suits you." The unexpected compliment caught her off guard, and Natalie felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Thank you. I should go before it gets too dark to see the trail." "Let me ride with you," Ethan said. "It is not safe for a woman to travel alone, especially at dusk. There are mountain lions in these hills and worse things than that sometimes." "I cannot ask you to do that. You have work to do here." "You did not ask. I offered." He was already moving toward the tack room, pulling down a saddle. "Besides, it will give me a chance to see if you actually know how to ride or if you have just been fooling us all day." Natalie bristled. "I rode here this morning without incident." "On Daisy," Ethan pointed out. "That mare could find her way blindfolded. I am talking about real riding." Despite her irritation, Natalie found herself smiling. "Is that a challenge, Mr. O'Connor?" Ethan, he corrected. And maybe it is. They rode together toward Hot Springs, and Natalie discovered that Ethan had been right about one thing. She was not a particularly skilled rider. She could manage well enough on gentle terrain, but when the trail became rocky or steep, she found herself gripping the saddle horn tighter than she would have liked. Ethan never said anything, but she caught him watching her from the corner of his eye, ready to help if needed. "How long have you owned the ranch?" she asked, trying to distract herself from the way the muscles in her thighs were beginning to protest the ride. 5 years, Ethan replied. "I came out west from Boston after my father died. He left me enough money to buy land, and I wanted to build something of my own, something that could not be taken away." There was a story there, Natalie sensed, layers of meaning beneath the simple words. "You said you wanted something that could not be taken away. Did someone take something from you?" Ethan was quiet for so long that Natalie thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, "My father built a successful shipping business in Boston. When he died, my older brother inherited everything. He made it clear there was no place for me in the family company, said I was too wild, too undisciplined. So I took my small inheritance and came out here to prove I could build something just as successful on my own terms." "Have you?" Natalie asked. "Proven it, I mean." He smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Some days I think so. Other days, when half my men are sick and cattle prices are falling, I wonder if my brother was right. Maybe I am just a dreamer pretending to be a rancher." "From what I saw today, you have built something real," Natalie said. "The ranch is well maintained, your men respect you, and even in illness they speak well of you. That is not the work of a dreamer. That is the work of someone who follows through." Ethan turned to look at her, and something in his expression made her heart beat faster. "You are not what I expected, Natalie Lawson." "What did you expect?" "I thought Dr. Pemberton was sending some stern older woman, someone who would lecture and judge and treat my men like they were children. But you are young, and you listened to them. You treated them like people, not just patients." "They are people," Natalie said simply. "That is the most important part of medicine that they never teach in universities. You have to see the person, not just the illness." They rode in companionable silence after that, and Natalie found herself studying Ethan when she thought he was not looking. He sat his horse with unconscious grace, moving with the animal as if they were one creature. His profile was striking against the darkening sky, all strong lines and quiet confidence. She wondered what it would be like to know him better, to understand the layers of experience and loss that had shaped him into the man he was now. When they reached the outskirts of Hot Springs, Ethan pulled his horse to a stop. "I should head back, but thank you for coming out to the ranch today. I know I was not welcoming at first, and I apologize for that." "You were protecting your men," Natalie said. "I understand that. Still, I should not have questioned your competence based on your age or your gender. That was wrong of me." Natalie felt a smile tug at her lips. "Apology accepted. And Ethan, you are not alone out there. If you ever need help, whether it is medical or otherwise, you can send for me." He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Why would you offer that to someone you just met?" "Because I think you have been carrying everything alone for too long," Natalie said quietly. "And because I believe we all need someone to lean on sometimes, even stubborn ranchers who think they can handle everything themselves." Ethan laughed, a real laugh this time, and the sound transformed his face. "You have me figured out already, do you? I am a physician. I am trained to observe and diagnose. And my diagnosis is that you, Ethan O'Connor, need to let someone help you occasionally." "Is that your professional medical opinion?" "It is," Natalie said solemnly, though her eyes were twinkling. "Then I suppose I had better listen," Ethan said. "After all, You are the physician." He tipped his hat to her and turned his horse back toward the ranch, and Natalie watched him ride away until he disappeared into the gathering darkness. Only then did she continue on to Dr. Pemberton's office, her mind full of green gold eyes and unexpected conversations. Dr. Pemberton was waiting for her when she arrived, concern evident on his weathered face. "I was beginning to worry. How did it go at the Circle O?" Natalie filled him in on what she had found and the instructions she had left. Dr. Pemberton nodded approvingly. "You did good work today. And Ethan O'Connor, did he give you trouble?" "At first," Natalie admitted, "but I think we came to an understanding." "That man," Dr. Pemberton said with a sigh. "He is brilliant at running that ranch, but he has isolated himself out there. I have tried to befriend him, but he keeps everyone at arm's length. Lost his fiancée about 3 years ago, right before he moved out here. She died of pneumonia, and I think he blamed himself for not being able to save her." Natalie felt her heart constrict. "He was engaged to a woman back in Boston. Beautiful girl, from what I heard. They were planning to marry and move west together. But she fell ill that winter, and despite all the doctors and all the money his family could throw at the problem, she died. Ethan left for New Mexico a month later and has barely left his ranch since. Throws himself into work like a man trying to outrun his grief." The pieces suddenly fell into place. Ethan's wariness, his loneliness, the way he seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. He was not just a stubborn rancher. He was a man who had loved deeply and lost everything, who had built walls around his heart to keep from being hurt again. "Thank you for telling me," Natalie said. "It helps to understand." "I thought it might," Dr. Pemberton replied. "Just be careful, Natalie. Ethan O'Connor is a good man, but he is also a wounded one, and wounded creatures can lash out when you try to get too close." That night, Natalie found herself unable to sleep again, but this time it was not the unfamiliar sounds of the desert keeping her awake. It was the memory of green gold eyes and a voice that softened when he said her name. It was the image of a man riding alone back to his ranch, surrounded by vast empty spaces that matched the emptiness in his heart. She had come to Hot Springs to heal the sick, to use her medical knowledge to help those in need. But Pedro's words kept echoing in her mind. He is still good. Still capable of softness, even if he has forgotten how to show it. Could a physician heal a lonely heart? And more importantly, should she try? The next 2 days passed in a blur of activity. Hot Springs might have been small, but there was no shortage of medical needs. Natalie treated a child with a broken arm, an elderly woman with pneumonia, and a miner who had nearly lost his hand in an accident. Word spread quickly that there was a new doctor in town, and people began showing up at Dr. Pemberton's office with ailments they had been living with for months or even years. "You are going to work yourself to death at this rate," Dr. Pemberton told her on the second evening. "You have barely stopped since you arrived." "There is so much need," Natalie replied, rolling her shoulders to ease the tension. "How did you manage all of this alone?" "Poorly," the old doctor admitted. "I prioritized emergencies and let everything else wait. It was not ideal, but it was all I could manage. Having you here, though, it is like taking a weight off my shoulders." On the third day, Natalie rode back out to the Circle O ranch to check on the sick men. This time, she made the journey alone, feeling slightly more confident on Daisy's steady back. The landscape seemed less harsh today. The desert in bloom with small purple flowers that Pedro would later tell her were called scorpion weed. The ranch was quieter when she arrived, with most of the men out working cattle. But Ethan was there, and he emerged from the barn when he heard her approach, wiping his hands on a rag. "You came back," he said, and there was something in his voice that sounded almost like relief. "I said I would," Natalie replied, dismounting with only slightly more grace than she had shown 3 days ago. How are the men doing? Better, Ethan admitted. The ones who were worst off are up and around again. Pedro has been following your instructions about boiling water and keeping things clean. That is good news. May I examine them to confirm they are recovering properly? Of course. I will take you to the bunkhouse. As they walked across the yard, Natalie noticed that changes had been made. The bunkhouse windows were propped open, letting in fresh air and sunlight. Someone had cleaned the area around the building, removing debris and waste that had been accumulating. Inside, the smell had improved dramatically, and the men who had been so sick 3 days ago were sitting up, some even playing cards. "Miss Lawson," one of them called out, "you were right about the clean water. I feel better than I have in weeks." Natalie examined each man, pleased with their progress. The dysentery was clearing up and none of them showed signs of complications. As she worked, she could feel Ethan watching her, his presence a constant awareness at the edge of her vision. "You have done well," she told him when she finished. "I think we have successfully contained the outbreak. Just make sure to continue boiling water until you can dig that well I recommended." "I have men working on it now," Ethan said. "Should be finished by the end of the week." They walked back outside together, and Natalie prepared to mount Daisy for the ride back to town. But Ethan stopped her with a hand on her arm, the first time he had touched her beyond a handshake. Even through the fabric of her sleeve, she could feel the warmth of his palm. "Wait," he said. "I was hoping you might stay for lunch. Pedro has been cooking all morning, and I think he would be disappointed if you did not try his food. Besides, I wanted to talk to you about something." Natalie knew she should refuse, should maintain professional boundaries and not blur the lines between physician and patient. But something in his eyes, a vulnerability he rarely showed, made her nod. "I can stay for lunch." Pedro's cooking turned out to be excellent, far better than anything Natalie had eaten since leaving Philadelphia. They sat at a rough wooden table in the main house, and Natalie took in her surroundings. Simple furniture built to last, a fireplace that looked well used, and windows that let in views of the mountains. It was a masculine space, but not unwelcoming. "You wanted to talk to me about something?" Natalie prompted when they had finished eating. Ethan set down his coffee cup and met her eyes. "I need to apologize to you properly, not just for how I treated you when we first met, but for why I treated you that way. You do not owe me an explanation, Ethan." "Maybe not, but I want to give you one anyway." He took a deep breath. 3 years ago, I was engaged to a woman named Catherine. She was smart, beautiful, and she believed in my dream of building a life out west. But that winter, she got sick. Pneumonia. I watched her die slowly, watched doctors poke and prod her, give her medicines that did not work, make promises they could not keep. When she died, I think part of me died too. I came out here to get away from everything that reminded me of her, to build something new. But I also built walls around myself, around my heart. When you rode up to my ranch, so confident and determined, it reminded me of Catherine, and I think I resented you for it. Natalie felt tears prick at her eyes. "I am so sorry for your loss." "It was a long time ago," Ethan said, though his voice suggested the wound was still fresh. "But what I am trying to say is that you were right. I have been alone too long. I have been so focused on not feeling pain that I forgot how to feel anything else. And then you came along, talking about healing and caring for people, treating my men with such kindness, and I realized how much I have been missing." "What do you mean?" Natalie asked, though her heart was beating so fast she could hardly hear her own voice. Ethan reached across the table and took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "I mean that you came to heal the sick, Natalie, but I am sick too, in a different way. My heart has been lonely for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to want to open it up again. Until I met you. Natalie stared at him, unable to speak. Part of her wanted to pull away, to remind him that she was his physician, that this was inappropriate. But a larger part, the part that had noticed the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled and the gentleness beneath his rough exterior, wanted to lean closer. "I am not asking for anything," Ethan continued quickly. "I know we just met, and you probably think I am crazy for saying all this. But I wanted you to know that you have affected me, Natalie Lawson. You have reminded me that there is more to life than work and grief and isolation, and I am grateful for that, even if nothing else comes of it." Natalie turned her hand so that her fingers intertwined with his. "I do not think you are crazy, and I am glad I could help, even if it was not the kind of healing I expected to do." They sat like that for a long moment, hands clasped across the table, both of them afraid to move and break the fragile connection forming between them. Finally, Natalie spoke. "I should tell you something too. I came out west partly because I wanted to help people, but partly because I was running away from my own life. Back in Philadelphia, everyone had expectations for me. My family wanted me to marry well and give up this foolish notion of being a physician. The medical establishment tolerated me but would never truly accept me. I was tired of fighting to prove myself, tired of being seen as less than because of my gender. Out here, I thought maybe I could start fresh." "And have you?" Ethan asked. "Started fresh?" "I am beginning to think so," Natalie said softly, "though not quite in the way I expected." Ethan smiled, and Natalie realized how handsome he was when he let his guard down. Life rarely goes the way we expect it to, but sometimes that is a good thing. Natalie stayed at the ranch for the rest of the afternoon, ostensibly to check on the men's continued recovery, but really because neither she nor Ethan seemed ready to say goodbye. He showed her around the property, introducing her to the cattle and explaining the challenges of ranching in New Mexico. She found herself fascinated by his knowledge and passion for the work, the way his whole demeanor changed when he talked about building something lasting. "Why cattle?" she asked as they stood watching a herd graze in the distance. "Because they are honest," Ethan replied. "They do not lie or manipulate or have hidden agendas. If you treat them well and manage the land properly, they thrive. If you do not, they suffer. There is something clean about that, something I appreciate after growing up in a world where everything was politics and social maneuvering." "I understand that more than you might think," Natalie said. "Medicine should be about healing people, but back east, it was more about who you knew and how much money you had. The poor died of treatable illnesses while the rich survived because they could afford better care. It made me angry." "Is that why you became a physician? Because you were angry?" Natalie considered the question. "Partly, but mostly because my younger brother died when I was 12, and I was helpless to save him. I swore then that I would never be helpless again, that I would learn everything I could about medicine so I could help others who were suffering." Ethan reached out and tucked a strand of hair that had escaped her bun behind her ear, his touch gentle. "You have a good heart, Natalie. This world needs more people like you." The sun was beginning to set when Natalie finally prepared to leave, and this time, Ethan insisted on riding with her again. As they made their way toward Hot Springs, Natalie found herself relaxing into the rhythm of the ride, enjoying the way the desert turned golden in the fading light. "Can I see you again?" Ethan asked as they reached the edge of town. "Not as my physician, but as myself. I would like to know you better if you are willing." Natalie's heart soared. "I would like that very much." "Sunday," Ethan suggested. "I could take you riding, show you some of the prettier parts of the territory. There is a canyon about an hour from here where the walls turn red at sunset. It is something worth seeing." "Sunday," Natalie agreed, smiling. Over the next few weeks, a pattern developed. Natalie spent her days working with Dr. Pemberton, treating the various ailments and injuries that came through their door. The work was demanding but satisfying, and she felt herself growing more confident in her abilities. But the highlight of each week was Sunday, when Ethan would ride into town, and they would spend the day together exploring the countryside. He showed her hidden springs where wildflowers grew in impossible profusion, took her to the tops of mesas where they could see for miles in every direction, and taught her about the land and the delicate balance required to make a living from it. In return, she told him about Philadelphia, about her studies and her family, about the dreams she had carried with her across the country. But more than the places they visited, Natalie treasured the conversations they had. Ethan was intelligent and thoughtful, with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh. He listened when she talked about medicine, asking questions that showed genuine interest. And slowly, carefully, he began to open up about his past, about Catherine and his grief, about the loneliness he had been carrying for so long. "I thought I would never feel this way again," he told her one Sunday as they sat by a creek, watching the water flow over smooth stones. "After Catherine died, I convinced myself that love was too dangerous, too painful. It was safer to be alone." "And now?" Natalie asked, though her heart was already beating faster in anticipation of his answer. Ethan turned to look at her, and the expression in his eyes made her breath catch. "Now I think I was wrong. Being alone might be safer, but it is also empty. And you, Natalie Lawson, have filled up all those empty spaces I thought I wanted to keep empty." He kissed her then, gentle and tentative, as if afraid she might pull away. But Natalie leaned into the kiss, her hands coming up to frame his face, and felt something inside her shift and settle into place. This was right. This was what she had been searching for without even knowing it. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I am falling in love with you," he whispered. "I tried to fight it, tried to tell myself it was too soon, that I was being foolish, but I cannot help it. You have captured my heart, Natalie, and I do not think I want it back." "Good," Natalie said, smiling through the tears that had started to form in her eyes. "Because I am falling in love with you too, and I am not in the habit of giving back things I have captured." They spent the rest of that afternoon by the creek, talking and kissing and making plans for a future that was beginning to feel real and possible. Ethan told her about his dreams for the ranch, about wanting to build it into something that would last beyond his lifetime. Natalie talked about her hopes for establishing a proper medical practice in Hot Springs, maybe even a small hospital someday. "We could do it together," Ethan said. "I could help you build the hospital, and you could help me remember that there is more to life than just work." "Is that a proposal, Mr. O'Connor?" Natalie teased. "Not yet," Ethan said with a smile. "When I propose to you, Natalie Lawson, it will be properly done with a ring and the words and everything you deserve. But it is a promise that I want a future with you." As summer turned to fall, their relationship deepened. Ethan began spending more time in town, helping Natalie with various projects and becoming a fixture around Dr. Pemberton's office. The old doctor watched their courtship with approval, pleased to see two people he cared about finding happiness together. "You are good for him," Dr. Pemberton told Natalie one evening. "I have not seen Ethan smile this much in all the years I have known him." "He is good for me too," Natalie replied. "He challenges me, supports me, and makes me laugh. I never thought I would find someone who understood both my passion for medicine and my need for independence." But their happiness was tested when a crisis struck the ranch in October. Several of Ethan's cattle fell ill with what appeared to be anthrax. a deadly disease that could spread rapidly through a herd and even infect humans. Natalie rode out to the ranch immediately when word reached her, finding Ethan exhausted and covered in dirt, having spent 2 days straight trying to contain the outbreak. "We have lost 30 heads so far," he told her grimly. "If I cannot stop it, I could lose the entire herd. And if that happens, the ranch goes under. I will lose everything I have built." Natalie examined the sick animals, consulted her medical texts, and then sat down with Ethan to develop a plan. It involved quarantining the sick cattle, burning the carcasses of the dead ones, and disinfecting everything that had come into contact with the infected animals. It was brutal, exhausting work, but Natalie worked alongside Ethan and his men, refusing to let them face the crisis alone. "You should not be here," Ethan told her on the 3rd day, when she was so tired she could barely stand. "This is dangerous work, and if you get sick too, the whole town will suffer." "I am exactly where I need to be," Natalie said firmly. "You are facing a crisis, and I am not going to abandon you just because it is difficult or dangerous. We are in this together, Ethan. That is what love means." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight despite the dirt and sweat that covered them both. "What did I do to deserve you?" "You opened your heart," Natalie replied simply. "You took a chance on love even though you were afraid. That takes more courage than most people ever manage." By the end of the week, the outbreak was contained. They had lost 40 cattle in total, a significant blow but not a fatal one. Ethan's quick action and Natalie's medical knowledge had saved the rest of the herd and prevented the disease from spreading to neighboring ranches. As they sat together on the porch of the ranch house, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, Ethan took Natalie's hand. "I have been thinking," he said, "about what you said earlier about being in this together. I want that, Natalie. I want to build a life with you, face whatever comes our way as a team, and I do not want to wait any longer to make it official." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a simple gold band set with a small diamond. "This was my grandmother's ring. She was an immigrant from Ireland, came to America with nothing but hope and determination. She built a life here, raised a family, and she was the strongest woman I ever knew, until I met you." Natalie felt tears streaming down her face as Ethan got down on one knee. "Natalie Lawson, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my companion through whatever life brings? Will you help me heal my lonely heart and let me support you in all your dreams?" "Yes," Natalie said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you, Ethan O'Connor. I will love you and stand beside you and build a life with you. Yes to all of it." He slipped the ring onto her finger and then kissed her, deep and passionate, pouring all his love and relief and joy into that single moment. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were laughing and crying at the same time. "We should probably tell Dr. Pemberton," Natalie said, wiping at her tears. "He will want to know." "He already knows," Ethan admitted sheepishly. "I asked his permission before I came out here. He said you were old enough to make your own decisions, but he gave me his blessing anyway. Said it was about time someone made an honest woman of you." Natalie laughed. "That sounds like him." They rode into town together that evening to share the news, and Dr. Pemberton welcomed them with a smile and a bottle of whiskey he had been saving for a special occasion. "I knew from the moment I saw you two together that this would happen," he said, pouring them each a small glass. "You are well matched, both of you stubborn and passionate and determined to make a difference in the world. You will be good for each other. When will you marry?" He asked after they had toasted to their future. Natalie and Ethan looked at each other. "Soon," Ethan said. "I do not see any reason to wait, unless Natalie wants a big wedding." "I want something simple," Natalie said. Just our friends, maybe here in town. I do not need anything elaborate. I just need you." They were married 3 weeks later, on a crisp November afternoon, in front of the small church in Hot Springs. Dr. Pemberton gave Natalie away, and Pedro stood up as Ethan's best man. Most of the town turned out for the ceremony, curious to see the lady doctor marry the solitary rancher. But as Natalie walked down the aisle toward Ethan, seeing the love and joy on his face, she forgot about everyone else. There was only the two of them, making promises to each other before God and witnesses. "I, Ethan, take you, Natalie, to be my lawfully wedded wife," he said, his voice steady and sure. "I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for as long as we both shall live. You came into my life when I had given up on happiness, and you showed me that my heart could heal, that I could love again. I will spend the rest of my life being worthy of the gift you have given me." Natalie could barely see through her tears as she made her own vows. "I, Natalie, take you, Ethan, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, support you, and stand beside you through whatever life brings. You believed in me when others doubted. You supported my dreams even when they were difficult, and you showed me that love does not mean giving up who I am. I will spend the rest of my life building a future with you, healing the sick and healing your heart, and being the partner you deserve." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan kissed her with such tenderness that Natalie felt her heart might burst from happiness. They walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next as a united team. The reception was held at the town's only hotel, with food provided by Pedro and music from a local fiddle player. Natalie danced with her new husband, with Dr. Pemberton, and with several of the ranch hands who had recovered from dysentery thanks to her care. But her favorite dance was the last one of the night, when Ethan pulled her close and they swayed together in the lamplight. "Are you ready to go home, Mrs. O'Connor?" he whispered in her ear. "Home," Natalie repeated, loving the sound of it. "Yes, I am ready." They rode out to the ranch together under a sky full of stars, and Natalie marveled at how much her life had changed in just a few months. She had come to Hot Springs as a single woman hoping to establish a medical practice. She was leaving her wedding reception as a wife, with a partner who supported her dreams and a future full of possibility. The ranch looked different to her now that it was her home too. Ethan had spent the past few weeks preparing the main house for her arrival, adding curtains to the windows and furniture that made it more comfortable. He had even set up a small room as a home office where she could keep medical supplies and notes. "I know you will still work with Dr. Pemberton in town," Ethan said, showing her the office. "But I thought you might want a space here too, in case anyone needs medical help when you are at the ranch." Natalie wrapped her arms around him, overwhelmed by his thoughtfulness. "It is perfect." "You are perfect." Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a coming together of two people who had each been alone for too long. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the darkness, Ethan traced patterns on her shoulder with his fingertips. "I never thought I could be this happy again," he admitted quietly. "After Catherine died, I thought that was it for me. One chance at love already lost. But you proved me wrong, Natalie. You showed me that hearts can heal, that it is possible to love again, maybe even love more deeply because you understand how precious it is." "I love you, Ethan O'Connor," Natalie said, pressing a kiss to his chest. "And I promise to spend every day of our marriage showing you just how much." Life settled into a new rhythm over the following months. Natalie continued to work with Dr. Pemberton 3 days a week, riding into town to treat patients and assist with more serious cases. The other days, she worked from the ranch, treating ranch hands and neighbors who came seeking medical help. Word spread that the Circle O had a physician in residence, and people began to travel from surprising distances to seek her care. Ethan supported her work completely, even building a small clinic building near the main house, so she could see patients without having them come into their home. He helped her order medical supplies, kept her books balanced, and made sure she ate and slept even when she was consumed by a difficult case. In return, Natalie helped Ethan manage the ranch, offering suggestions and support when challenges arose. She learned about cattle and horses, about managing land and men, about the delicate balance required to make a living from the harsh New Mexico landscape. They worked together, planned together, and built a life that was richer than either of them had imagined possible. Spring brought new life to the ranch. Calves were born, the desert bloomed with wildflowers, and Natalie discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks but waited until she was certain before telling Ethan. When she finally shared the news one evening over dinner, his reaction was everything she had hoped for. "A baby," he said, his voice full of wonder. "We are going to have a baby, in about 6 months," Natalie confirmed, smiling at the expression of joy and terror on his face. "Are you ready to be a father?" Ethan came around the table and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "I am terrified and thrilled and so grateful I can barely find words. You have given me everything, Natalie. A home, a purpose, love, and now a child." "How did I get so lucky?" "We both got lucky," Natalie said, resting her head against his chest and listening to the steady beat of his heart. "We found each other when we both needed healing, and we built something beautiful together." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Natalie refused to slow down her medical work as much as Ethan would have liked. "I am pregnant, not ill," she reminded him when he tried to insist she stop riding into town. "Women have been having babies while doing hard work for thousands of years." "I will be fine." Dr. Pemberton was thrilled about the baby and insisted on examining Natalie regularly, turning the tables on his former student. "You take care of everyone else," he told her sternly. "Someone needs to make sure you are taking care of yourself." As her belly grew, Natalie found herself thinking about the future in new ways. She wanted their child to grow up in a world where anything was possible, where dreams were not limited by gender or circumstance. She wanted to raise a child who understood the value of hard work and compassion, who knew how to build something lasting. She shared these thoughts with Ethan one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. "I want our children to know they can be anything they want to be," she said. "Whether it is a rancher or a physician or something we have never even thought of, I want them to chase their dreams the way we did." "They will," Ethan assured her, his hand resting on her swollen belly. "They will have the two of us as examples, showing them that with determination and love, anything is possible. And they will know they are loved always, no matter what path they choose." Their son was born on a warm October evening, arriving quickly and with surprisingly little fuss for a first baby. Natalie had insisted on having the baby at the ranch, with Dr. Pemberton attending and Ethan by her side. When the baby finally emerged, healthy and wailing, Ethan cut the cord with shaking hands and then held his son for the first time, tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," Ethan whispered, staring down at the tiny face. "He looks like you." "He has your eyes," Natalie said, exhausted but happy. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months but never quite settled on one. Now, looking at their son, Ethan said, "What about James?" "It was my grandfather's name, the one who came over from Ireland with nothing and built a life here. I would like to honor that." "James O'Connor," Natalie tested the name. "I like it. James Morrison O'Connor, after my mentor back in Philadelphia." "Perfect," Ethan said, bending to kiss her forehead. "Thank you, Natalie. Thank you for this gift, for this life, for everything." The first months of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. James was a healthy baby but demanded constant attention, and Natalie found herself operating on far less sleep than she would have recommended to any of her patients. But every time she looked at her son, or saw Ethan cradling him with such tenderness, she felt overwhelmed with love and gratitude. Dr. Pemberton visited often, bringing gifts and advice. "Fatherhood suits you," he told Ethan during one visit, watching him pace with a fussy James. "You are more relaxed than I have ever seen you." "I have everything I ever wanted," Ethan replied simply. "A successful ranch, a wife I adore, a healthy son, and work that matters. What is there to be tense about? 5 years ago, you were the most isolated, driven man I knew," Dr. Pemberton said. "You worked yourself nearly to death and pushed everyone away. Look at you now." Natalie did not just heal your men's dysentery, she healed your heart. Ethan glanced over at Natalie, who was preparing bottles in the kitchen. "She did more than that. She taught me how to live again, how to hope, how to love. I owe her everything." As James grew from an infant into a curious toddler, life on the ranch continued to evolve. Natalie gradually took on more of Dr. Pemberton's responsibilities as the old physician began to slow down. And within 2 years of James's birth, she had effectively become the primary physician for Hot Springs and the surrounding area. The clinic Ethan had built was expanded twice to accommodate more patients, and Natalie began training 2 young women who wanted to learn medicine. "You are building something important here," Ethan told her one evening as they watched James play with a set of wooden blocks Ethan had carved. "You are changing lives, just like you always wanted." "We are building it together," Natalie corrected. "I could not do any of this without your support." When James was 3 years old, Natalie discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the news felt different, less terrifying and more like a natural next step. They welcomed a daughter the following spring, a tiny girl with Natalie's dark hair and Ethan's green gold eyes. "What should we name her?" Ethan asked, cradling his daughter with the same wonder he had shown when holding James for the first time. "Catherine," Natalie said softly, "if you would like, to honor the woman who meant so much to you." Ethan looked up at her with tears in his eyes. "Are you certain?" "I do not want you to think I am still holding on to the past." "I am certain," Natalie said. "Catherine was part of your life, part of what made you the man you are. I am not threatened by her memory. In fact, I would like to honor it. Catherine Elizabeth O'Connor. What do you think?" "I think you are the most generous, loving woman I have ever known," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I think our daughter is lucky to carry such a strong name." Little Catherine, who quickly became known as Katie to everyone on the ranch, was a quieter baby than James had been. She seemed content to observe the world with solemn eyes, taking everything in. James adored his baby sister, constantly wanting to help care for her, and Natalie and Ethan marveled at how quickly their family was growing. Dr. Pemberton passed away peacefully in his sleep when Katie was 6 months old. It was not unexpected. The old physician had been in declining health for months, but it still hit Natalie hard. He had been her mentor, her friend, and the reason she had come to Hot Springs in the first place. At his funeral, she spoke about his dedication to healing, his kindness to all who sought his help, and his willingness to see past social conventions to recognize her abilities as a physician. "He changed my life," she said, standing before the assembled townspeople. "He gave me a chance when few others would have. He believed in me, supported me, and taught me that being a good physician is about more than just medical knowledge. It is about compassion, about seeing the person behind the illness, about never giving up on someone who needs help. I will honor his memory by continuing his work and living up to the example he set. After Dr. Pemberton's death, Natalie officially took over his practice, becoming the sole physician for the region. It was a daunting responsibility, but she felt ready for it. She had 7 years of experience treating frontier ailments now, and the respect of the community. People no longer questioned her abilities because of her gender. They came to her because she was good at what she did, and because she cared. The years passed in a blur of work and family, challenges and triumphs. The ranch prospered under Ethan's management, growing from a moderately successful operation, one of the most respected in the territory. Natalie's medical practice expanded as well, and she eventually realized her dream of building a small hospital in Hot Springs, funded partly by donations and partly by the money the ranch generated. When James was 10 and Katie was 7, Natalie found herself pregnant again, much to everyone's surprise. "I thought we were done," she told Ethan, laughing at the expression on his face when she shared the news. "Apparently not," Ethan said, pulling her close. "How do you feel about it?" "Happy," Natalie admitted. "I love our life, I love our children, and I love you. Another baby just means more love to go around." Their third child, another boy they named Thomas, arrived that winter during a snowstorm that blanketed the ranch in white. James and Katie were fascinated by their new brother, and Natalie watched with pride as they both showed the same careful tenderness that Ethan had always demonstrated with their children. "We have built something extraordinary," Ethan said one evening, watching all 3 children play together while Natalie rested on the couch. "A family, a ranch, a medical practice, a life. Do you remember when we first met? I was so determined to keep everyone at arm's length, so convinced that isolation was safer than connection." "I remember," Natalie said, smiling at the memory. "You were stubborn and suspicious and so lonely you could barely stand it, even if you would not admit it." "And you refused to give up on me," Ethan said, sitting beside her. "You saw past all my walls and defenses to the person underneath. You healed my lonely heart, Natalie. You made me whole again." "You did the same for me," Natalie replied, taking his hand. "I came out here thinking I just needed to practice medicine to help people. But I was lonely too in my own way. I was missing something I could not even name. And then I found you and suddenly everything made sense. We healed each other." As the years continued to pass, their children grew and thrived. James showed an aptitude for ranching, spending hours with his father learning about cattle and land management. Katie, to Natalie's delight, showed interest in medicine, often accompanying her mother on house calls and asking endless questions about anatomy and treatment. Thomas was still too young to show clear preferences, but he seemed equally comfortable with animals and people, suggesting he might follow either parent's path. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Ethan surprised Natalie with a trip to the canyon where he had first told her he loved her. They left the children with trusted friends in town and rode out together, just the 2 of them, like they had done so many times in the early days of their courtship. "I wanted to bring you back here," Ethan said as they sat watching the sunset paint the canyon walls red and gold. "To the place where everything changed for us. Do you remember what you said to me that day?" "I said I was falling in love with you," Natalie recalled, leaning against his shoulder, "and that I was not in the habit of giving back things I had captured." "You captured my heart that day," Ethan said, "and every day since I have been grateful that you kept it. You have given me 15 years of happiness, 3 beautiful children, and a life beyond anything I could have imagined. I love you more now than I did then, which I would not have thought possible." "I love you too," Natalie said, tilting her face up to kiss him. You asked me once to heal your lonely heart, and I said yes. But what I did not realize then was that you would heal mine too. We healed each other, Ethan. And we have spent 15 years building something beautiful from that healing. They stayed at the canyon until the stars came out, talking and remembering and making plans for the future. There was still so much they wanted to do. Expand the hospital, improve the ranch, watch their children grow and find their own paths. But underlying all those plans was the solid foundation of their love, tested by time and trial and proven strong. When they finally rode back to the ranch, they found their children asleep and the house peaceful. Ethan carried Thomas to bed while Natalie checked on James and Katie, tucking blankets around them and pressing kisses to their foreheads. Then she and Ethan retired to their own room, holding each other close in the darkness. "Thank you," Ethan whispered, "for everything. For seeing past my defenses, for believing in me, for building this life with me. You came to Hot Springs to heal the sick, but you gave me so much more than that." "We gave each other so much more than that," Natalie corrected gently. "We gave each other a second chance at happiness, a partner to face life with, and a family to love. That is the best kind of healing there is." As Natalie drifted off to sleep in her husband's arms, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. She had left Philadelphia as a young woman with a medical bag and a dream, traveling across the country to a remote town in New Mexico territory. She had expected to find patients who needed her skills, and she had found that. But she had also found something she had not been looking for. A man whose lonely heart matched her own, a partner who understood both her strength and her vulnerability, a love that had transformed both their lives. She had come to heal the sick, and in doing so, she had discovered that sometimes the most important healing happens in the heart. Ethan had asked her to heal his loneliness, and she had given him love. In return, he had given her the same, along with a family, a home, and a future full of possibility. The years continued to unfold with the steady rhythm of ranch life and medical practice. Katie eventually followed her mother into medicine, studying under Natalie, and then traveling back east for formal training. She returned to Hot Springs at age 22 with a full medical degree, something Natalie had never been able to obtain, and together they expanded the hospital into a true regional medical center. James took over more and more of the ranch operations as Ethan grew older, demonstrating the same careful stewardship and love for the land that his father had shown. He married a school teacher named Sarah, and they gave Ethan and Natalie their first grandchildren, twin girls who were the absolute delight of their grandparents' later years. Thomas, true to his early promise, split his interests between ranching and medicine, ultimately becoming a veterinarian who served the ranching community throughout the territory. He never married, preferring to dedicate his life to his work and his extended family. As Ethan and Natalie entered their 60s, they gradually stepped back from the day-to-day demands of ranch and medical practice, leaving those responsibilities to their capable children. But they never fully retired, always ready to offer advice or assistance when needed. They spent their days together, riding through the countryside they both loved, watching their grandchildren grow and marveling at the life they had built together. "You ever regret it?" Ethan asked one evening as they sat on the porch of the ranch house, the same porch where he had proposed so many years ago. Leaving Philadelphia, giving up the chance to practice medicine in a big city, coming out to this remote corner of the territory. Natalie looked at him in surprise. "Regret it? Ethan, coming to Hot Springs was the best decision I ever made. I found my life's work here, my purpose, my family. I found you. How could I possibly regret any of that? I just want to make sure you feel like you have lived the life you wanted," Ethan said. That being married to a rancher and raising children in the wilderness was enough for you. More than enough, Natalie said firmly, taking his weathered hand in hers. I came out here wanting to make a difference, to use my medical knowledge to help people who needed it, and I did that. But I also found something I did not even know I was missing, a partner who loved me, supported me, and built a life with me. You gave me everything I needed, Ethan. You still do. You saved me, Ethan said quietly. I was so lost when we met, so buried in grief and loneliness that I had forgotten how to live. You brought me back to life, Natalie. You healed my heart and gave me a reason to hope again. Everything good in my life came from that healing. They sat together in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in the familiar shades of orange and purple they had watched together countless times. Around them, the ranch bustled with activity as the next generation took over the work. But here on the porch, there was peace and contentment and the deep satisfaction of a life well lived. Natalie thought about the young woman she had been when she first arrived in Hot Springs, full of determination and idealism and secret fears that she would not be good enough. She had come to heal the sick, armed with her medical knowledge and her desire to make a difference. What she had not anticipated was that she would also heal a lonely heart, and in doing so, heal her own. Ethan had been right all those years ago when he told her that life rarely goes the way we expect it to. She had planned to be a physician, to dedicate her life to medicine, and she had done that. But she had also become a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a partner in building something that would last beyond her own lifetime. She had helped establish a hospital that would serve the region for generations. She had raised children who were making their own positive impacts on the world. And she had loved a man who had loved her in return with a depth and constancy that still took her breath away. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, noticing the faraway look in her eyes. "About how lucky we are," Natalie said. "About how we came together when we both needed healing, and how we built something beautiful from that shared need. About how love can transform everything if we are brave enough to accept it." Ethan smiled and pulled her closer, and Natalie rested her head on his shoulder, listening to the steady beat of his heart. It was the same heart she had been asked to heal so many years ago, the lonely heart of a grieving rancher who had given up on happiness. She had healed that heart with patience and love and steady presence, and in return, he had healed hers. That was the secret, Natalie realized. Healing was never just one person fixing another. True healing happened when two people came together, acknowledged their wounds, and helped each other become whole. She had not saved Ethan any more than he had saved her. They had saved each other, two broken people who had found completeness in their union. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, their grandchildren's laughter drifted across the yard, and Natalie felt a profound sense of peace. This was what she had traveled across the country to find, though she had not known it at the time. Not just the chance to practice medicine, but the opportunity to build a life filled with love, purpose, and meaningful work. A life where she could heal bodies and hearts, including her own. Ethan pressed a kiss to the top of her head, and Natalie smiled, knowing that even after all these years, his love for her had not diminished. If anything, it had grown deeper and richer, tempered by time and trial into something unbreakable. She had come to Hot Springs to heal the sick. The rancher had asked her to heal his lonely heart instead. And in doing both, she had found everything she had ever wanted and things she had never even known to dream of. It was, she thought, the perfect ending to a story that had begun with a simple medical call to a remote ranch. Except it was not an ending at all. It was just another chapter in a life still being lived, still being written, still full of possibility. And as Natalie sat there with her husband under the vast New Mexico sky, surrounded by family and legacy and love, she knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, just as they always had, just as they always would. The end of one journey and the continuation of another, all woven together by the thread of a love that had healed two lonely hearts and created something beautiful in the process.